Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
We want to welcome you to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline show. If you have not heard about this free service with the National Federation of the Blind, you will want to pay much attention to our show, our commercials, and get the information that is required for you to contact us, and the information that is required for those that are, let me start that one all over. Okay. 3, 2. We want to welcome you to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline show. And today, we want to share great information with you, particularly during this holiday season, about a special service that allows people that are blind, those that are print challenged, those that have shaky hand syndromes, that just can't have proper ways of reading information from your newspapers and magazines. This great program allows individuals to do that independently. Florence, some of the programs that we have and the articles that we have are just fantastic. You know, for the first time, we can read your local newspaper, or read your Wall Street Journal, or read your Indianapolis Business Journal. Let's talk a little bit about what you do with the service.
Surely. I know that some people are probably wondering, how are blind people going to read this service? Well, it is a free audio information service for the blind and visually impaired, as you mentioned. And I love reading the newspapers, the magazines, Lee. One of my favorites, as I always say, is Guidepost. Guidepost is an inspirational magazine I've been reading for years, and as my sight got worse, I'm still able to access it through NFB Newsline. That's one of the one of the magazines that I enjoy reading. Another one that I enjoy reading is WebMD. Gives me a lot of information. I like to stay on top of medical topics and things that pertain to me. And Lee, there's Reader's Digest. Goodness, there's a plethora of information out there. Also, before I don't want to forget about this one. With this being a holiday season, we've got some sales ads out there. So we have more than just Walmart and Target. So we have some sales circulars that will enable us to bargain shop. And that's important to me.
It's very important. I love bargain shopping on Newsline. Mm-hmm. And also, you might want to know, what devices do we use to access these services? You know, I have an iPhone here. That's one of the devices. You want to talk about the others?
Sure. Another device is the Victor Reader Stream. There's a digital player from the Talking Book and Braille Library. There's also the computer, and also Alexa is.
Alexa.
We can access NFB Newsline using Alexa. So we have some tools that we're using to utilize this information, and it is a great tool to have.
Yeah, and for the children that are just waiting to see track where Santa Claus is, you can do that on NFB Newsline as well. So we have international newspapers and publications as well. So if he's in China, you'll be able to know that he's in China, kids. So you can track him all the way from China to Jerusalem to Russia, all the way on over here to the United States, anywhere. And for those of you that are like me, that are sports enthusiasts, you can follow your sports teams, what they're writing about them in their particular cities. You can create your own features such as just for sports. If you just don't want to listen to the entire publication, you can put in there just for sports. If you're a cook or you enjoy food, you can just put in there for food all across the country. And you can just go to those cities and read those publications. So just pay attention to the commercials. They're great commercials, and you'll learn more on how to contact and how to utilize this free audible information service. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with our guest.
With my failing eyesight, I'm not able to read regular newspapers, and I'm not able to keep up with obituaries.
I've been a homemaker all of my life, but since my vision has failed, I wish I could read my favorite magazines.
Have you heard of the NFB Newsline?
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
Wow, I scored a touchdown when I found sports on NFB Newsline.
I enjoy reading TV guide listings on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind. We read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
We want to welcome you back to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline show. And today we have a very special guest. And Florence, I think we're very fortunate to have this guest because she shares so much information.
Yes, we have our guest today, Miss Lisa Hutcheson from Mental Health America. And Lisa, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and what is your title?
I am the Vice President of Prevention and Advocacy. So we do a lot of prevention programming in our office, and I'm also part of our lobbying team that goes to the State House to work on mental health and substance abuse issues at the State House.
Okay, so you advocate for individuals as well. That's awesome.
Yes, we do. We have been instrumental in passing a lot of legislation that has to do with mental health services and treatment to make sure people are getting the help that they need to get treatment or counseling services for their mental health and or addiction issues.
Now, when this, with your services and your expertise, there's individuals that may not even know that they have a mental health issue.
Sure.
How would you say a person would go about recognizing that, they have a mental health issue?
Sure. All of us at one point in our lives might feel sad or anxious about something, but usually those feelings go away after a couple of weeks or maybe a few weeks. But if someone is having persistent feelings of depression or anxiety, and it's really impacting the way they live their lives, impacting their family life, their work life, then they probably need to see a professional. And professionals have a lot of tools at their disposal, a lot of assessment tests that can help a person figure out, do I have a mental health issue that needs treatment? So, and through our office and many other places across the state, you can find counselors and psychologists and community mental health centers that can help you figure that out.
Okay, now Mental Health America, now you mentioned that it is an advocacy organization, also preventive mental health agency also. What I wanted to find out is, Lee mentioned that sometimes people aren't aware that they have some things going on. Now, do you also get calls from family members or other people who might think that someone else might have some things going on?
Definitely, and one of the programs through our office is a mental health ombudsman program, and she is responsible for helping family members navigate the process that sometimes has to happen in Indiana if you feel like you have a relative who may not be able to care for themselves, has a mental illness that is disrupting their lives, but they aren't willing to seek help for it themselves. So she helps families navigate that process. She helps families navigate and individuals navigate the process of finding the right mental health therapies for them, or if they're having trouble with insurance companies or issues finding the right placement, she can help do that. So we do get a lot of calls from family members and people in the community who say, I don't know how to help my family member or my friend, where can I go? And she helps them navigate that process.
Okay, now Lisa, I again would like to thank you for coming to the show, especially, this time of year. For it is my understanding that, during the holidays, people exhibit a lot of issues as far as coping with the holidays and coping with other things during the holidays. Now, what would you suggest that a person might do who does know that, I'm sad and I usually get sad this time of year. What would you suggest?
Right, and the National Alliance for Mental Illness released a survey a couple of years ago that says 64% of people with mental illness find the holidays to be stressful. And I think all of us probably find the holidays to be stressful. We have expectations of perfect family gatherings and our houses being spotless and our Christmas decorations being perfect, and particularly with someone with a mental illness or addiction can find these situations to be stressful because they have anxiety about going to parties. Maybe you're estranged from family members and you know that family gatherings are going to be difficult. Maybe you have an addiction to food or alcohol, and so going to parties where that is abundant causes you stress. A lot of people tend to not want to be around other people at the holidays because they are so depressed, they want to stay isolated. So it's difficult, particularly this time of year, because we feel the pressure to go to all the parties we're invited to host people at our house, to be at every family gathering, to make sure our children have a perfect Christmas, and it is very stressful. So I would say just remember that we don't live in a Hallmark movie, and our lives are not going to be perfect, and our holidays are not going to be perfect, and we are going to still have the same issues with our family members and friends that we might have during the year. So remember to just take time for yourself. If you are feeling overwhelmed, don't feel like you have to say yes to every invitation. Tell your family, I really need time to myself. I'm not going to be able to make it to this event. I think it's important for us to find quiet spaces during the rush of the holidays, whether for you that's your faith tradition, if you find that at church, or whether you find that through yoga or meditation or reading or whatever helps you cope with that. We need to remember to do that for ourselves. And then if you're overwhelmed to the point where you really cannot handle it yourself, you really do need to seek professional help. And, there are great mental health professionals in our state that can help us cope with the holidays when we need some extra help.
Now, do you find you service a lot of veterans that have served in the military?
Sure.
Police officers or
yes.
things of that nature?
First responders particularly have higher rates of suicide than the general population, so that can be military, that can be law enforcement, firefighters. And through our office, we have a Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, and the director of that organization, David Berman, also is on the Indiana Suicide Prevention Network and directs a lot of those activities. And again, particularly at the holidays, I think those issues are heightened because you're around other people who may not know how to communicate well with you or don't want to say the wrong thing. And so PSTD is definitely a real issue in our state, and I know we are addressing that through not only legislation, but trying to make sure that veterans and first responders have the services they need. Because often we look to them to be the brave ones, the ones that, help us, and we don't realize that through their jobs, just the fact that they are seen as the ones that everyone turns to in a time of crisis, that they internalize a lot of that stress and don't really understand how to deal with it in a healthy and effective way. So I think it's great if we see a first responder, just check in with them, how are you doing? How's this season for you? There are a lot of fires at this time of year because people are using heaters to heat their houses, and so we know that there is a lot more activity that happens with our first responders over the holidays.
Well, we're going to take a short pause, Lisa, and viewing audience and listening audience, and we're going to come back with more information from Miss Lisa Hutcheson. Thank you.
I'm Danny Wayne Beamer, Program Manager of the Elder Blind Program at the Will Center in Terre Haute, Indiana. I introduce the NFB Newsline to seniors in 13 southwestern counties in Indiana. I also utilize the NFB Newsline for my radio station public affairs shows. The NFB Newsline. Experience it today.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read your Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
Welcome back to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show with our guest today, Ms. Lisa Hutcheson from Mental Health America. And Lisa, we were talking about some issues concerning mental health, and I wanted to find out, our guests, our audience, I'm sure will want to know as well, what about mental health and children? Do you see a lot of mental health agencies seeking assistance for children this time of year?
Sure, and one of our subsidiaries is called Infancy Onward, and they focus on the child from 0 to 3. And most of us would think, well, what mental health issues would a child from newborn to 3 years old have? But really, when we think about it's called adverse childhood experiences. So really what happens to us as children really does impact us in our mental health as we get older. And it could be a traumatic birth experience, it could be an injury as an infant, abuse, neglect from a parent, and as children get older, it could be bullying issues in school. It could be divorce of parents, parents with mental health or substance use issues. So certainly our children, who are really one of our most vulnerable populations, do have mental health concerns. And I know the governor just announced yesterday that he will be really focusing on mental health in schools. So we definitely are supportive of those initiatives, not only to have counselors in place at school, but to really look at how we contribute to the mental wellness of students. So talking about some of that preventative action that we can do to make sure that they come to school with, full, not hungry, that they have, their basic needs met before we try to educate them, and to make sure that we're trying to focus on their family situation as well, not just while they're at school. So our children definitely need our support, and when they do need mental health assistance, there are a lot of organizations, thankfully, that can provide that.
Now, my question too, as we talked about our children, oftentimes we have incarceration and mental health.
Yes.
And you expound on that just a little bit.
Yes, unfortunately, our jail systems have become the largest provider of mental health services. It is estimated that 80% of all people who are incarcerated have some sort of mental illness or addictive issue. So they have become the largest provider of services. And not only does that impact the person while they're incarcerated, but it certainly impacts their family and their children if they have any. So thankfully, here in Indiana, we've taken a look at what services are people getting while they're incarcerated. Are we able to provide them with adequate mental health and addiction services? And then how do we transition them to the community once they get out? We know that it doesn't work just to stick them back in the same environment. We really need to help them find jobs, housing and support for their families. Now they're able to not lose their benefits while they're incarcerated, so that there is no lag in the time they get out when they go back into the community, so they can still access their mental health services, take their medications, whatever has been prescribed for them while they've been incarcerated. So that's definitely an area I think that we need to continue to look at and improve.
So is there legal representation provided by Mental Health America of Indiana?
We don't necessarily provide legal representation, but there are organizations in the community that do that, especially if you are looking to get like a felony expunged off of your record. We worked on that legislation a couple of years ago, so that now if you have a nonviolent felony and you're a person in recovery, you can work to get that expunged off your record, because we all know it's difficult to find a job when you have a felony on your record. And this law helps people who really have tried to improve their lives and are in treatment and have, some recovery to be able to get, jobs that pay a living wage, hopefully, with expunging the felony off their record.
All right, now Lisa, what are some signs of mental illness?
There are a lot of things that you can look for, but really, a change in eating or sleeping habits, maybe a change in attitude, someone who, has always been maybe outgoing and positive suddenly isn't, wants to spend a lot of time by themselves, isolating themselves. With kids, it could be maybe they have a whole new friend group, maybe their grades have become poor when they've normally been a good student. Maybe some self-harming behavior. This is particularly true with kids, again, where they might be cutting themselves, or also true with young people and adults, the use of substances. Maybe they're trying to self-medicate through alcohol or other drugs. Just, physical changes. They look maybe bad because they aren't sleeping well, or they're not eating well. They've lost weight or they've gained weight. Any change that is apparent to you that you've never noticed before, or that you've noticed over time, may be a sign that the person is struggling with a mental health issue.
Now, is there any segment of our population that, the mental health issue is more prevalent?
I would say, mental health is no respecter of persons. We're all impacted by mental health issues, and some of us by substance use issues. I'd say the more vulnerable populations are our children and even our elderly population. We have an aging coalition that focuses specifically on the mental health of elderly people, which are often a forgotten segment of our society. They are isolated because they don't have visitors or family coming to see them anymore. So we know that they are more likely to have substance abuse issues because they turn to alcohol and other drugs. And when you mix that with medications, that's not a great combination. But you mentioned veterans and first responders. They have higher, rates of suicide. Indiana, unfortunately, also has higher rates of suicide for young people than we do as a national average. So I would say, we really have a concern for all of our population, but specifically want to make sure that our most vulnerable populations are getting the services they need.
Okay, now Lisa, what usually brings a person to Mental Health America?
Like I said, we have 11 subsidiaries, and we provide direct services all the way from counseling and assessment to the advocacy at the State House that I mentioned. So people come to us when they're looking for services, but also we provide a lot of training and education in the community. We provide a lot of advocacy, not only at the State House, but across the community, in community organizations as well. So we provide a wide variety of services at our office.
Okay, now how can a person like myself get involved?
We are always looking for volunteers. We welcome volunteers. We have special fundraising events throughout the year. We have subsidiaries that always are looking for volunteers to help them in their work. So it's just a matter of contacting our office.
Now, is there a cost to your services?
It depends on what you're seeking. Some of them, if you work with a subsidiary who gets a grant, for instance, from the state, maybe the Division of Mental Health and Addiction, some of the trainings and things that we do are free. Some of our counseling services are provided on a sliding scale basis, depending on the income of the person, and most are covered by insurance. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
Well, we're going to take a short pause and come back with our show so we can learn just a little bit more from Ms. Lisa Hutcheson. So take care, and we'll be right back.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
We're going to welcome you back for the conclusion of our show with Ms. Lisa Hutcheson. So, Lisa, what is people first language? What's proper language for people with coping with mental health?
Sure, thanks for asking that. I think when we put the person first with any illness or disability, I think we help to reduce the stigma. So instead of calling someone crazy or saying they're depressed, we like to say, this is a person with depression. Just like any other illness, mental illness is a brain disorder that can be treated, and treatment works and recovery is possible. So anytime we can put the person first, that helps reduce some of that stigma that still exists when we know people have mental illness or addictive disorders. We really need to think of it as another illness that can be treated.
We have a contact number where a person might be able to reach.
Sure. Our office number is 317-638-3501. And we also have a website. It's www.mhai.net. And you can go on the website and see all the services we offer. And there's further ways to contact staff on there.
Okay. And from your experience, what would you recommend, once again, for those that are coping with depression during the holiday season?
Sure, just remember that your symptoms may be exacerbated during the holidays just because of all the stress and the pressure. And this year it's a shortened holiday season by about a week. So I think we all feel the pressure to make sure things are done. But just remember to take your medications. If you have medications, check in with your physician, check in with your trusted family member or friend when you feel overwhelmed. Remember to find a quiet place for yourself during the bustle of the season. And really remember that the season really is about peace and love and joy, and however you can find that in your life is important.
So we're going to wrap our show up with peace, love, and joy, and a Merry Christmas to each and every last one of you, and a Happy New Year.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org. or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.